Ros-Lehtinen of Florida.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And I'd just like to remind my good friend Ambassador Burns that while he says that there are two governments, Rouhani and the hardliners, both were very much active just this past Friday when they were chanting death to America, death to Israel. So we like to talk about these two separate entities, the hardliners and the moderates. They have one goal in mind, and they say it, death to America, death to Israel. But we ignore that. But according to reports, the White House seems to have caved on almost every one of Iran's demands, blowing past its own red lines on enrichment, centrifuges, on verifications, on inspections, on sanctions relief, and on coming clean on past nuclear ambitions and military dimensions. And along the way, the administration has made excuse after excuse justifying every Iranian violation of this interim deal in order to continue negotiations, providing billions of dollars in sanctions relief, and is set to provide billions more. And now we know that Iran, what will it do with its additional sanctions relief and the influx of international investment that it's going to receive from this deal? It's going to continue funding its hegemonic ambitions throughout the Middle East, its support for terrorism throughout the world, just as it has been doing in Lebanon and Syria and Yemen and Iraq. And as reported, it is clear that this deal is a far cry from every red line that the White House itself imposed. And it's a lower threshold than the 6 UN Security Council resolutions. And I look back on and read these resolutions, and I think, wow, that's like a fairy tale. Once upon a time, the world powers got together and said, this is what we were going to demand. The administration kept lowering the bar time and time again, defending its the violations of the Iranians every step of the way, going legacy shopping. Here's another item off the shelf, the Iranian nuclear deal. People will be worried about whatever else is going on in their in the music industry and in the film industry. Nobody's going to pay attention. Let's look at the shiny keys. The administration has also reportedly said that it would only lift nuclear-related sanctions, even though officials would never describe exactly how that was defined. But now reports indicate the administration has caved to the Iranian claim that all the sanctions are nuclear-related. So, do you believe that the U.S. and the UN should be lifting sanctions imposed on Iran for its human rights record, its ballistic missile program, its support for terrorism, including the arms embargo? And following up on Chairman Royce's exact point, General Hayden has pointed out that the IAEA must be allowed to inspect these suspect locations, military sites, et cetera, but you had told us and your colleagues believe that weaponization would never occur at declared facilities, would be done in the secret facilities. It's now being reported that the deal would allow suspect activities, suspect sites to have access only after the P5+1 consultation with the Iranians. Secretary Kerry has stated that inspecting Iran's military sites, coming clean on possible military dimensions, isn't even necessary because the U.S. has full knowledge of Iran's activity, but many in the intelligence community, including DIA Director, former DIA Director Michael Flynn, have argued that the limits, there are real limits on U.S. intelligence in Iran. It makes this impossible. How can we trust Iran to give UN inspectors access to suspect sites after consultation with P5+1 countries? How hard is it to gather intelligence in Iran? How can we have full knowledge of Iran's activities without access to all these sites? And finally, Mr. Chairman, many supporters of the Iran deal have been floating the fantastical idea that Iran will change its behavior as a result of this agreement, become a better neighbor in a more stable Middle East. How will lifting the sanctions and influx of new money from sanctions relief, Iran's involvement and influence throughout the Middle East, it will have more money to be involved in its hegemonic ambitions. There's not enough time to answer all of the questions that I have. And not only these sanctions that the UN supported once upon a time. We're done with that. We might as well just rip that one up. That's not happening. And what about our U.S. sanctions? You know, Mr. Chairman, we talk about what sanctions we will lift, but there are some within our control. But there's so many executive order sanctions that the president can lift. So many provisions that he can waive. I know that I'm out of time, but I'm greatly saddened, sickened, and frustrated over this deal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr.